Hello there guys, PC Guy here with the news and tech and game for the week, and I'd like to open this episode in a good note. It is the first time in the almost 2 years that I have been running this channel that someone actually used one of the Amazon links. So it is for the first time that our total income for the channel went from 0 to probably somewhere under $1. It's not a whole lot, but it is encouraging to see, and hopefully more people make use of that in the future to improve some features like camera, lighting, etc. Between that there and this here, which I'll let you see in the photo now, is a bit far from ideal. I've actually been busy lately with some ideas to improve the background of the set. Well, the set, it's our PC gaming room, so to kind of improve the background a little bit, give it more of a tech channel feel, let's say. So you can expect to see that maybe next week's episode if I have enough time to actually put it together with all the work. But in any case, that also should already improve very soon and be a little bit less boring in the background there. The best way to help us grow is still to subscribe to the channel to increase our visibility and have more chances to do sponsored content and such. So hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and if you'd like to help start a tech channel grow. For the actual news and tech and gaming, well, it's been mostly based on AMD's release of the refresh Zen 2 processors from the 3000 lineup. I obviously don't have one on hand to actually review myself, but I can still give you guys my opinion and expose the specs and if it actually is worth getting one of those or not. There's also been a few leaks and rumors and whatever from Ampere, the RTX 3000 lineup from Nvidia that is supposed to launch sometime in September. Still completely unconfirmed, but that's what is pretty much kind of agreed upon in the rumor circles. So let's start with AMD's Zen 2 refresh, and are they actually worth it? As far as the release of the 3000 XT processor series, the specs were already known. They were announced by AMD a few weeks back, and they fell short of what the leaks and rumors were announcing beforehand, so that's a cautionary tale. Do not put too much credit when I mention that an article or information is an unconfirmed rumor. Take it all with a grain of salt. In practice, what these processors ended up being is a refresh of the old versions with basically 100 MHz boost on the boost clock, so higher clocks in terms of boost, and the same base frequency, so not much change there. The suggested price, or MSRP, is the same as the previous versions, so $499 for the 39,000 XT, the $399 for the 3800 XT, and $249 for the 3600 XT. Core count and etc. remains the same, so does the cache, and they should be already available on the shelves, or at least at the digital retailers as we speak. Nothing changes in terms of compatibility or anything like that. They are supposed to be able to overclock a little bit further at the cost of, well, quite high temperatures. Now this is all nice and fine, but it's not as clear-cut as you might think. While they do offer better performance at supposedly the same price, we have to consider that on the non-XT version of the processors, they were frequently selling quite a bit lower under the MSRP, so you will find them cheaper than this. And they do come with a cooler included. The 3600 XT still will come with the Rave cooler included, just like the processors before. The 3800 XT and 3900 XT, however, will not have a cooler included. Now, the logic behind this decision is AMD claims that people who buy those kinds of processors will usually want a better cooler anyway to take full advantage of it by running them cooler, so they'll boost a bit higher. However, I have criticized Intel in the past for not including a cooler with their K series, which would be handy, and I do agree with the statement that people will usually buy their own high-performance cooler for chips like this. However, it's always handy to have them at hand if, let's say, your cooler fails, your AIO or water block or whatever starts leaking or dies, or the pump dies, you want a cooler on hand to just slap in there so you can run it for a little bit while you get a replacement. While it might not bring out the best of the best performance of that chip, it will at least make it work and then not fry itself. So it would be nice to actually have that cooler included, especially considering that we're not really seeing a drop in the prices, and like I mentioned, the old versions of these chips are selling under the MSRP. These will sell most likely at the MSRP, or in any case more expensive than the other older variants of the chips. Do they perform faster? They do. However, it's not really that much of a landslide. It's around 3 to 4% increase in performance, and you are paying for it, and you do not get the cooler, which it's kind of, yeah, I just made that argument. I see both sides of the equation, and if you are at least not getting a cooler, then I would expect the prices to be lowered slightly to compensate. It also is a jab at Intel by kind of closing the gap between Zen 2 and Intel's Combat Lake generation that pulled Intel ahead, even if by a very brief margin and for not very long. And they are closing the gap now, while the next generation, Zen 3 or Ryzen 4000, is in the horizon. It's still going to be this year. AMD has confirmed that once again. So this is just a way to kind of, well, use their best bin silicon while also retaining mindshare as being the top dog right now in terms of value per performance. Do I advise you to get one of these processors if you cannot wait for Zen 4? And if you do not find $30 or $40 cheaper equivalent on the non-XT lineup, then sure, it's a good buy. They're good value pieces. There's no arguing with that. But if you have a 3900X to go buy a 3900 XT to replace it, that's just a waste. Previously discontinued application, AMD StoreMI, has been remade in a way that is from AMD's own software and not relying on third-party software. It is a solution that makes your hard drives a bit faster by using part of an existing SSD that you might have in your system and using part of that drive as a cache for a slower hard drive, meaning that it will be quite noticeably faster in terms of read, that hard drive that is. This is all on the software level, so it means that in theory it should be compatible with any hard drive and SSDs that you might have, and it might just bring a bit of new life to your hard drives if you use them, for example, to play games off, and that way the read of that games will be a bit faster with that cache from the SSD there. It does not appear to have many downsides other than kind of taking a little bit of space from your SSD to use as a cache, so it's always a nice addition to see. And to get all the AMD news out of the way right at the start of the video, some processors have been kind of leaked and hinted at through various means of information, so this is unconfirmed info, mind you, but it seems like the Threadripper series is also getting some new life breathed into it in the form of the Threadripper Pro series, which will be the 3995WX, 3975WX, 55WX, as well as a 45WX. These will bring the improvements of having a whole lot more of PCIe lanes, in this case 128 PCIe Gen 4 lanes as opposed to 64, so double basically, as well as 8-channel memory support as opposed to the quad-channel memory support that the current Threadripper generation has. And TDP is same as the previous generation at 280 watts, and that comes at the cost of having slightly lower clock speeds than the previous Threadripper generation, but the inclusion of 8 channels of memory as well as so many PCIe lanes definitely will bring a whole lot of attraction to the people that want to use these things to actually use them professionally. It has not been announced yet and launch dates are obviously unconfirmed, but they are mentioned to maybe getting some more information on July 14, coinciding with the launch of some Lenovo workstations that might actually feature these CPUs. It's not known if they will be available for purchase otherwise or if they will be only available to system integrators, so let's wait until they are announced to speculate about it. At a time when streaming and both streaming as game streaming and streaming services like Netflix, etc., are getting more and more popular, and everything is kind of going on a high gear in terms of resolution. Some good news that there is a new H.266 codec that is being developed and is now ready and has now been announced by Fraunhofer, the German company that handles these encoding codecs, and supposedly it will use half the data needed to be streaming 4K videos. It will mean less buffering when you are trying to watch something, it will mean less delay and lag when you are trying to upload something yourself, so that's always good news. NVIDIA's GeForce Now service has kind of been improving lately after a few difficult times after its launch. Some very important games kind of pulled out of the service as soon as it was launched. Games like I personally tested, for example, like World of Warcraft, Destiny, among many others, cancelled their participation on the GeForce Now service because of not being very clear how it was going to be handled in terms of the monetization part. I still personally think gaming companies try to do a cash grab right there by double dipping on game sales and then also wanting a part of NVIDIA's profits there, while NVIDIA just provided a platform for playing and not a game storefront on itself. But that's just my personal opinion. In any case, they seem to be bouncing back. They have been adding games every week. I don't always cover it because it's just a few games here and there, but it's noteworthy that they have promised to try to get back the games that they lost at the start, and they are now showing that they have been able to. Games like, for example, Destiny 2 that were available at the start and removed have now been added back. In this case, Destiny 2, Wolfenstein Youngblood, Dauntless, and Fortnite, they are now again available on GeForce Now after being removed at the start, so it's good to see that that game service is kind of getting back on its feet. We are now entering NVIDIA's rumorland, so once again take everything here with a buttload of salt. So the leaks start featuring the RTX 3060 as well as 3770 series, so we are starting with the 3060. They apparently mentioned that the 3060 will be costing anywhere between the $300 and $400, so for a mid-range CPU, I still say that that's a bit on the high side. This is the values that we would be seeing for higher tier CPUs back 3-4 years ago, and I cannot say I agree with this inflation that's been going on, but that's not my decision. Not a whole lot of meat on that 3060 rumor, only that there's going to be a 3060 and 3060 Ti, or Super, depending on how they call it. So the rumor for the 70 series has a little bit more meat on its bones. They also claim to have information about the pricing in the $400 to $500 range, which is actually a pretty reasonable price compared to the previous generation, I believe. So not a massive price hike right there. Considering that they feature both the 3070 and its Ti version, I am assuming that the 3070 will be on the lower end of the spectrum and the Ti on the higher end, which would obviously make sense. They actually have information about the supposed specs on this article. According to this chart, that is all unconfirmed information, mind you, they will be both featuring the GA104 die. They both will have 8GB of GDDR6, difference being that the Ti will have GDDR6X, which is a faster version, and in terms of CUDA cores, you'll be looking at 2944 and 3072 respectively. This is quite an increase from its current version on the 20 series, with over 600 cores boost in both cases from the one generation to the next. This was all unconfirmed information, mind you, so don't hold me to it and don't take it as gospel when the launch actually happens. We don't know virtually nothing about this launch. We only know that it is going to be called Ampere, and that's basically it. I have no concerns about its performance. I am sure that NVIDIA will blow us out of the water in terms of performance boost. My doubts are more on the pricing front. I think that the 60 series rumor that I just mentioned to you guys is probably accurate in terms of pricing. The $300 to $400 range seems in line with what I expect from NVIDIA for that lineup at this point in time. However, the 70 series seems a bit on the cheaper side from what I would expect. The 2070 launched back then, when it first launched, before the Super was a thing, at a price point of $599, so kind of aiming for the $400 to $500 seems a bit Unlike Nvidia, I would expect it to at least match the price of previous generation. Obviously, I hope more than anyone else that the prices will actually come down to a more reasonable level that we saw a few years back, and not really climb higher. Because the rumors that we have heard in the past about the cooler for the RTX 3080 needing costing an extra $150 to produce, etc, etc, that all seemed like mind games from Nvidia trying to prepare us to another bump in price. I hope that's not the case. There is the other side of the coin though, that AMD is actually being more competitive now, especially on that mid-range where the 70 series sits. The 5700 XT was quite competitive with the 2070 and 2070 Super, so Nvidia might be kind of taking a preemptive strike at this market segment here, especially knowing that RDNA 2 cards are around the corner. They might want to secure and lock down by offering better prices on that segment. Remains to be seen how it will translate on the higher end segment with the 3080 Ti or 3080 Super, or whatever they're calling it these days, or 3090, or who knows, pink unicorn card, you know, take a pick. Remains to be seen if that pricing will be affected by AMD's pressure or not, and what AMD's offers are actually going to be on the high end. A very unexpected Intel CPU has also have been found at a few benchmark sites. It's called supposedly Core i9-10850K, and it seems to be a slightly cut down version of the 10900K. It has the same 10 cores and 20 threads found on Intel's current consumer flagship, the difference being that it has a slightly lower boost clock, around the 5.2 instead of the 5.3 that the flagship sports. It might be aimed at the OEM or similar builds and not really available to the general public as a boxed version. And it seems to me that the attempt here is to those chips that just didn't quite make it to the frequency that the 10900K sports, they are being repurposed as this model, because Intel has no other 10 core part. They could theoretically just fuse down a few of those cores, make them inoperable, and turn them into 10700Ks, but then you are possibly just throwing away two perfectly good functioning cores just because they couldn't quite hit that frequency just by a few megahertz. So repurposing them on a kind of in-between step SKU kind of might make sense, depending on how many of the 10900Ks are actually on that position where they just quite don't meet the mark by a hair. So yeah, remains to be seen if we can actually get hands on this processor, or if they are only aimed at system integrators, etc. for their builds. But again, nothing has been announced regarding this. It has just been found on some benchmark sites, so we'll see how Intel goes with this. We're entering the tail end of the episode, and we have a few news stories that, while not really industry groundbreaking, they might be interesting. And it turns out that the Atari VCS console is about to be available around November, and pre-orders are up. Now, it is, as the name implies, a remake of the Atari to today's standards. Now, the thing that has gotten people a bit up in arms though is the price. The price is supposed to be around $390 for a console that has, for that price, a little bit of a lackluster hardware. They listed here a Raven Ridge AMD APU, Vega 3 GPU, 8 gigs of DDR4 and 32 gigs of inbuilt storage. So for this price, it seems kind of a stretch, especially considering that the Xbox and the PlayStation 5 are going to be launching around the same time period for probably not a whole lot more money, a whole lot of better specs, and much more gaming compatibility. It seems like a thinly veiled attempt to kind of aim at a nostalgia hook and hope that people are going to buy it because, oh, I used to have an Atari back in the day. But in terms, if you look at it rationally, this purchase might not make a whole lot of sense. Last but not the least, if you guys want a nice roomy SSD for all your Steam games and such to actually run silky smooth with amazing loading speeds, have no worries, there's a 100TB SSD right around the corner just for you. You only have to shell out about about $12,000 for the 50TB versions, with the 100TB version coming at $40,000 for Basically, you can download almost the entire Steam and shove it in here. So these have been the highlights of the week, mostly leaks and speculation. I advise you guys to take those with a very heavy grain of salt, because until something is actually confirmed by the respective companies, it could just amount to nothing and be people speculating about what they wish is going to happen, more than what is actually going to be released and priced at, etc. If there's any truth to it, I expect to hear about it in an official manner sometime next month in August. Seems like a plausible expectation if things are actually going to release in November. So yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Drop a like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more videos from us. That's what we really need to grow more than anything right now, is to increase our subscriber numbers. And like I said, stay tuned, and I will be working on the set along the week, hopefully. So maybe next week around this time you will be able to see it on the next week's episode of Weekly Tech News. So I'll see you guys next week, and in the meantime, have fun.